Man, I know it's late, but I'm really happy to be recording the video at the time that I'm recording it, because we had some extra news that makes the entire JT Miller 100 thing a lot more feasible. And again, I have to do this again. I have to knock on wood. I always have to do that every time we bring up the point goals and the point totals and all that stuff, because for JT Miller against the Edmonton Oilers tonight at 6 p.m. PST, we have ourselves the final game of the season. Miller is hopefully going to play. Again, knock on wood. Miller is at 98 points. He's got 31 goals and 67 gosh darn assists. He needs 2 more points to take himself over to 100 and become the 6th franchise Vancouver Canuck player ever to reach the century mark. The only other Canucks to go out there and get 100 points in seasons before are Pavel Bure, who did it twice in 93-94, Daniel Sedin in 2011, Henrik Sedin in 2010, Naslin in 03, and Alex Mogilny in 1996. I like that Joey Kenward phrased this tweet and ordered it in terms of importance, because yes, Bure doing it twice, fantastic. Daniel Sedin did it the most recently. Henrik Sedin was there. You have Naslin, who was there, and then Mogilny was not really a Canucks legend. He was a legend, but not a Canucks legend, so I can understand why he is at the bottom here. But JT Miller has an opportunity against an Oilers squad that will not be playing McDavid and Draisaitl today to get 2 more points and to cement himself amongst the best Canucks of all time. Okay, maybe not all time. Mogilny's there. He's not really one of the best Canucks of all time. And if Miller gets on this list, I don't really think he's going to be defined in the same way either, but still, it's something fantastic to think about, that he is indeed in that position with 98 points on the year with 1 game left. But unfortunately, that's not our video topic today. You clicked on this video because there's a very specific word that makes things very interesting when you think about where exactly JT Miller's future is going to be. Frank Seravalli had himself a little article that he wrote about when it comes to JT Miller and the Stanley Cup field. He's got 10 burning questions facing the NHL's 16 non-playoff teams. And the article will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read it yourself. 10 burning offseason questions, yada yada yada, published yesterday on April 28th. And when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, this is what the question is that Seravalli writes. Can the Canucks re-sign JT Miller? That has to be the biggest offseason priority in Vancouver as Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin begin to put their stamp on the Canucks. It's going to be expensive. Miller had an all-world season for the Canucks. With 3 games to play, Miller has 31 goals and 98 points. He's 2 points away from being just the 6th player to hit the century mark in the Canucks uniforms. That list, Henrik and Daniel Sedin, Bure, we talked about that. That's it. More than that, JT Miller has established himself as perhaps the heartbeat of the team, their driver. Since arriving in Vancouver, Miller has 215 points in 200 games. He's set to enter the final year of his deal at $5.25 million a year. It feels like his next contract will have an AAV that begins with a 9. Are the Canucks ready to pony up to keep him? Teams were salivating over the idea of acquiring Miller this season, and they will be downright, oh boy, he said that? Really? He said that? Come on. Seravalli. I'm not going to say that word, because the YouTube algorithm is so strict that if I even try to indicate what that word might be, there might be some consequences on that. But you can see it on the screen. Teams will be downright blank this summer to acquire JT Miller. How will the Canucks create the salary cap flexibility they've been craving? What about Bo Horvat's next deal? Are the Canucks willing to enter next season without either or both Miller and Horvat unsigned? Buckle up. Now, I'll say this again. I've said this a ton. I'll say it again. I think if I had to place money on it, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would say this. I don't know what it is, but I feel like the Canucks are just going to re-sign Horvat. Miller's probably gone. This is too big of a chip to re-sign and give the extended amount of money to, because it doesn't align with what the Canucks are trying to build timeline-wise. Having a JT Miller on the team has been fantastic, and he makes the team better. He scored almost 100 gosh darn points, for crying out loud. But with the way the team is going, you cannot just quickly turn this franchise around. This is not a quick rebuild on the fly, and all of a sudden, boom, we're in the playoffs, and that was our goal kind of team. This team needs to look for the future, and this team needs to look long-term. This team needs to take all their assets and say, okay, is this asset going to help us when we make ourselves a contender? Not a playoff team, but a contender. Owen and Rutherford know how to build contenders. They did in Pittsburgh, they did their thing, and they were fantastic. But for Vancouver, this team is not close to being a contender yet. And for JT Miller playing the best hockey of his career right now, you have to ask yourself, is Miller at $9 million a year in his early 30s better for the team long-term than what a Miller could fetch on the trade market? Because if teams are downright H-word to acquire JT Miller at the draft or something when all the picks are solidified and they can free up the cap space because there's no cap in the offseason technically, right? I would not really be all too surprised if a team shells out a tremendous package for this player. He's got a year left, so it's not like he's a rental. Well, I mean, he's a rental, but it's not like a 1 or 2 month rental, right? This is a rental that's going to last you an entire season, which will give you the opportunity to build chemistry, to see where he fits, and just see what he's about. Because JT Miller is so talented, he's so skilled, he is so precise with a lot of the things that he does, and we know this. We've seen this the past few years, that any team acquiring a JT Miller is getting better. Even when he was acquired in Vancouver in the first place. At first, you had Marek Mazanec in the 3rd round pick over there. A lot of Canucks fans freaked out. They freaked out and they were like, oh my goodness, what is Benning doing? He's trading away draft picks for a middle 6 50-point player. And to be fair, if Miller was only that, I personally also would have been like, wow, seriously? That's a big package for a 50-point player. But considering the fact that Miller has almost doubled that in one season, I think I can live with it. I said it was okay back then, but like, I felt a lot more optimistic in Miller and what he was going to be able to do with the Canucks. It's just, there were a lot of people that were questioning the direction, and to be fair, it did bring the Canucks to the 2nd round of the playoffs, so, I mean, there was an experience there that I was very happily attached to. It's just, again, it boils down to philosophy. Jim Benning trading away picks and stuff for a young team, for players that did help him out and who are pretty young as well. It's just, this has probably been the luckiest Jim Benning has been when it comes to any of his trades in the past. Like, who would have thought Miller would have had 100 points or 98 points, right? Knock on wood, not playing against McDavid and Draisaitl, so it'll be easier for him to get points tonight. But when it comes to this team and where they're going to go, I say take the trade. If teams are really as H-word as Seravalli is writing about, don't try to free up $9 million in cap space. See what you can get. See what this kind of player is able to provide your organization long-term, because boy oh boy do near 100-point players not just all of a sudden become available in the circumstances that Miller has been made available. He's only making 5.25. Like, that's wild. I know there are a whole bunch of rumors that we had earlier on in the year where Seravalli himself was saying, okay, a Besser trade, for example, is more likely than a Miller trade. But you have to remember, that was back in the trade deadline times. That was a month ago. We are almost done paying our taxes. So, like, it's a completely different time over here. Rick Dhaliwal also said that it's a lot more likely to him that Besser does get re-signed rather than traded away like a lot of people were thinking they would be. So now the story and the focus shifts as to the other possibilities. Okay, if you're not getting that likely Besser trade that Seravalli said was the case in the trade deadline-ish area of this season, what about Miller? Now is he back on the market? Because the Canucks re-signed Brock Besser. It's not going to be cheap. That qualifying offer certainly makes things a lot more difficult, and if the Canucks go through reverse salary arbitration or they sign him for less, that's something that remains to be seen. But you're not going to re-sign Besser for cheap, so you're going to have to find ways to get that done, and also get Horvat done, and think about all the other players you're going to have to re-sign to, because when it comes to the bottom 6, we already said this, but the entire bottom 6 of the Canucks at the moment is pretty much gone next year. You need to re-sign all of those guys, and not all those guys are going to sign on sub-$1 million deals. So when it comes to creating cap flexibility, like Owen and Rutherford had said they wanted to do, Tyler Myers comes to mind, OEL comes to mind. There are other players on the team that I think you can converse about in that way, which you certainly have over the course of the season. But for JT Miller, he is the big fish. Not only do you free up some money by trading him away, but you also get yourselves a haul. A haul that will likely go out there and help the Canucks out for years if you play your cards right, and Owen and Rutherford make sure they actually do. So talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about JT Miller and the idea that some other teams will be downright H-word to trade for this guy and his services. Seravalli's words, not mine, but it was a beautiful word, which is why I'm using it in this video here. No, just kidding. I didn't use it. I showed it, but, like, I didn't say it verbally because, yeah, algorithm. Talk in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this British Trolls 99. And bye.